Hello and welcome back to Drawing with Mrs. Mills. Today we are going to be talking about the proportion of the whole body, and I've got a little artwork here to share. This is Albert Joseph Moore from 1877. It is a painting called Sapphires, and I thought this would be a good one to look at when we talk about body proportion. Now, when we talk about body proportion, it is really common for us to talk about heads. Head size, how many heads tall is the body? Why? Well, I think because it's pretty easy to see someone's head and use it as a tool for measurement. So let's take a look at this figure and let's talk about how many heads we have here. So I actually grabbed my ruler and did a little measurement here, and I think her head, let's go this way, is about an inch tall because she has kind of a very tall hat on. So I'm going to take just a smidge of it off for that. So if we say her head starts right here, and then we see that her chin is at an inch, and her toes are at 8¼ inches. I don't know if you can see that. So very roundaboutly, she's about 8 heads tall. Why is it helpful to know how many heads tall someone is? Well, this is going to help you set up your figure when you go to draw. So let's do a little bit of cheap and easy drawing here. If I take my 8 inches tall and I find the halfway point, that's at 4 inches, and I divide that again, that's at 2 inches, and then at 6 inches, and then I go one more time at 1 inch, 3 inches, 5 inches, and 7 inches. I have created a little scale here that would be 8 heads tall. Let's put this next to our lady. And you can see how, if this is a head, we could sketch a head into each one of these if we wanted to make a weird little head caterpillar, and sometimes maybe you've seen such things done. But this is a good basis to start. Now, an 8 head figure is going to give you kind of a tall, elongated figure. And there are different sort of recipes. Some people say 7½. And of course, every human is not the same. So not everybody's going to fit into 8 heads. Some people are going to be taller or be shorter, have bigger or smaller heads, and especially if you're talking about children, your head size is going to be larger relatively to the body. So this is not always 100% accurate, but when you're learning, this will help you. And the midpoint, which is right there, is going to be sort of in the middle of the pelvis. So when you're drawing somebody and you start to block in, their torso, their legs, this would be like sort of right in the middle of their pelvis. Here's the hips. Here's the legs. Your arms coming down. Now, some of you might know that your arms are generally, when you put your arm span out, your arm span is the same as you are tall, usually, about. So one arm length is going to be equal to about half of a body. So if we take our halfway point and start at the shoulder, you can come here. Sometimes I use my pencil to measure. Sometimes I eyeball it. So you can kind of tell where the fingertips are going to go here. Now, this is just a really basic idea. Usually, your width across your shoulders is close to 2 heads. If you're using your head, my head is an inch. So yeah, 2 inches for my little made-up person here. And this is just the very, very basic beginnings of drawing a person in proportion. And you've probably seen, if you draw in a different style, if you like to draw manga, if you like to draw cartoons, there's all different ratios. Cartoons sometimes have really big heads and small bodies. There's all different ways to work this. So I don't want you to think that this is like a rule, that every person is exactly 8 heads tall, and if they're not, you've drawn it wrong, because that's not true. And the idea that there's an ideal body, that there's a correct way that bodies should look, is wrong, right? We know there are all different kinds of bodies, and every body is a valid body. So don't get hung up on thinking that, oh, I measured out this person and it wasn't exactly 8 heads or it wasn't 7.5 heads. Remember, this kind of thing that we're doing is just to help us learn to draw. But it's going to be better if we actually look at some people and draw them in real life. So today you could try setting up what I did, which was an 8-inch tall person with a mark at each inch for the head, and then try to draw out that person. Again, it would be easier if you had a piece of art you were looking at, and I just drew that one from my brain, but we could work with this lady here and try to redraw her. She is standing in what's called a contrapposto pose, so you can see that her shoulders are on an angle and her hips are on an angle. So she is not just a straightforward person. This knee is coming forward. So that does make it a little trickier. And of course she's wearing a lovely gown, so kind of have to imagine the anatomy underneath. And again, see if so we said her head was about 1 inch, and yep, she's about 2 inches across the shoulders. So she is fitting into that measurement we said. So play around with, look at some photographs and see how many heads fit into a body that you're trying to draw. If that body is not straight on, like if you're not looking at it straight, if the body is folded or sitting, it's going to be a lot more difficult to calculate how many heads are involved because of foreshortening and because of all the other things that could be going on when that pose is not straight on. But as a basic beginning to drawing the body, breaking it up into heads is a really good way to start and to start learning about that. I'm going to put in her draperies. She's got this nice little hat on. So, as you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I didn't get her toes in. I think would be pretty close to 8 heads. So go ahead and give it a try. Try finding a picture. You can use this one. You can find your own. And see how many heads you can fit into a pose. And also maybe look at some other things, like look at some comic books. Look at some cartoon characters. See how many heads there are in their figures and how that affects what they look like. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and thank you so much for drawing with Mrs. Mills. I'll see you tomorrow.